I want to deal with an opening story that happened a number of years ago when Darlene and myself took a trip on a sailboat over in the Mediterranean, right? And we traced through Paul's missionary journeys in the book of Acts. There was about 30 of us on this sailboat with great big sails, and they flew in a physician for the week in case one of us got sick. We came mostly from America, but this physician flew over from Australia. And she was looking for a very different experience. And when she found out there's a bunch of Christian leaders on the ship, she was not too happy. And she was looking for kind of a wild party during the trip. And we had a party, but it wasn't wild. So the first night, we sat down, and there were long tables on the dining room. And I introduced myself, and she found out that I'm the leader of the group, and she was anything but a Christian. She wanted to fight on the first night. So Darlene and I sat right here on this table, like right here, and there were other people on the other side of the table, and she came right over and sat right next to me. And she had an edge on her. And there was an older couple right there. I noticed that they immediately enjoyed her. And she began to control the conversation, which was fine. She started asking really tough questions about Christianity, hard ones. And everybody around the table kept looking at me like, it's your turn to answer that one. And I didn't want to answer it. I wanted to see what the group did. So I kept eating. And finally, one person answered that question, and then another person got a hard question, and that person answered it. And then she got more frustrated, and she asked another hard question to the older couple opposite from her. And they, with love in their heart, answered the question. And she was getting more and more frustrated. She wasn't eating. I was eating. And I was the only one on the table eating at that moment. And finally, out of frustration, she turns to me and, well, you're the leader here. What do you think about all this? And I said, well, I think you're asking very good questions, which surprised her. But I've been listening to the answers, and they've answered every one of your questions. And it's not satisfying you, is it? What do you mean? I said, well, do you want the truth? Yes. All right. You can't believe. You're telling me I can't believe? No, you can't believe in Jesus Christ today. I can't believe in Jesus right now? No, you can't. What do you mean by that? Well, go ahead and believe. And she says, no, I can't. I don't want to. I know. And I kept eating. What do you mean, you know, I can't believe? I know you can't believe. And if you ever want to talk about why you can't believe, I'm here all week. And kept eating. So the conversation changed, and I noticed the couple across from her, the older couple, were kind of praying a little bit for her without her knowing it. You know, they didn't say, dear God, bless this woman on the other side of the table. Well, the next morning we got up for breakfast, and our room was downstairs, and we walked up the back, and we were to go along the back of the boat up the stairs to breakfast. And when we came out the door, guess who was sitting there on the side waiting for me? Was our doctor. And she had an edge on her. And I said, how are you? I've been waiting for you. And I said, oh. And I kind of nodded at Darlene, because oftentimes this will happen in meetings where you just kind of miss meals for people. So she went up, and I sat next to her, and I said, what's the matter? I couldn't sleep much last night. Why not? Because you said I couldn't believe, and I couldn't. And I want to know why. I said, you do? You really want to know why? Yeah, I do. All right. So, who hurt you the most? What? Who hurt you the most? Well, it wasn't my mother. It wasn't your mother. No, it wasn't my mother. I love my mother. I see. What did she do that hurt you? No. I understand why she did it. I didn't ask that question. What did she do? No, she didn't do anything. I love my mother. My mother loves me. And I said, stop defending your mother. I'm not attacking your mother. I'm asking what she did that hurt you. Well, what does it have to do with me not being able to believe? Believe it or not, it has everything to do with it. It does? Yes. So tell me one thing that your mother did. Well, she was an alcoholic. And when she drank too much, she would beat me. But I knew why she was doing it. It wasn't because she didn't love me, but she just lost her head. Okay. So she beat you. How else was it with your mother? She never hugged me. She never hugged you. No, she never did. Not once. I know she loves me, but she never showed it. Oh, how did that make you feel? I don't want to talk about it. Okay. Did you feel happy about that? No, I cried myself to bed many nights. You did. I understand. How else did she hurt you? That's enough. I said, okay. And I stood up. She said, where are you going? I said, you just told me it's enough. And I said, if you really want to get free, why don't you take your pad, because she had a pad on her lap, and write down all the ways your mother hurt you. Not if she wanted to, but she did. And write it down on a pad. She said, well, there'll be 3 or 4. No, ma'am, there'll be a couple pages. There'll be a couple pages. No, there won't. Yes, there will. And if you want, I'll help you. And then I walked away. I ate some breakfast. After all, priorities are priorities, and it was time for some coffee. Well, I didn't see her all day, and she didn't sit at my table at dinner that night, and I just was praying, Lord, release this lady. So the next morning, we're going out the same door for breakfast, and lo and behold, there she is, and she's red-eyed, and her pad, is on her lap, and it's all crumpled, and there was stains of her tears. I said, oh, how are you? I didn't sleep at all last night. Would you like to talk? Yes. Okay. So I sat down next to her, and I said, how many? Oh, it's 2.5 pages. I couldn't believe it. I said, each one of those wounds are in your heart, and you can't get them out. And you've been stuffing them and denying them and running away from them all of your life because you love your mother. Is that true? Yes. Would you like this infection to get out of your heart? Because once that infection is out of your heart, you will be a different person. I don't know how to do that. I said, I know how to do that. You know how to do that? Believe it or not, I'm an expert of that. You're an expert of helping people forgive. Yes. I would. And in the next period of time, through many tears, she forgave this one and 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 this one not. I had to help her later about that one and the rest of them. And I watched the woman change before my eyes. All the deep lines in her face were going. The anguish that was kind of hanging right underneath the makeup was going away. And by the time she was done, I said to her, how do you feel about life now? I don't hear any more voices in my head. You don't? No, I heard voices in my head all my life. They were hard. I didn't like them. I said, where are they now? Well, they're gone. It's quiet inside my head. Yeah, that's right. You're going to like that quietness. And I have peace like I've never had in my life. I said, well, this is just the beginning. Wait till you see what's coming on the rest of this journey we have this week. And I excused myself and went to eat. We went out on our tour that day. And the next night we were in our room downstairs, and my wife said to me, sweetheart, you know what I'd love if you would do for me? What? There's that soft ice cream machine up in the kitchen. They said we could take anytime we wanted. Would you go up and get me a little bowl of ice cream? I said, sweetheart, I'd be glad to. I may come back with 2 of those bowls. So I went up, was at the machine, when I heard somebody coming up the stairs back here. And I turned around, and lo and behold, it was the doctor. Much different, radiant person. And she came up, and I said, oh, how are you? And she said, oh, I've never lived like this. Then out of these stairs came that old couple. And they came walking over, and I then realized God was doing a setup. Yeah. I hope you know he does this all the time. By the way, you've been set up. You've been set up, and wherever you are, God is giving you a massive gift today. Amen. He's bringing something that will change you forever. Well, I turned to the lady and I said to her, you can believe, can't you? Yes. Starts to cry. Would you like to believe in Christ right now? I said, well, the perfect people to do that, to introduce you, is this older couple, because I noticed they loved you from the beginning. And I said, besides that, my ice cream is melting. So I walked right past them and went downstairs. Why? Because the Holy Spirit brought her up, brought me up, brought the couple up. Why? It was her time. Yes. Could it be that many of the things you wish could be true about your life, no matter how hard you try, isn't true about your life? And no matter how much you've prayed and how much you've tried, it just didn't fit together? Well, you're going to find out. Unforgiveness has roots beneath the surface of your life that spreads out and grows up another thing here, and you don't ever realize that thing you don't like, or it's painful and won't work, or that relationship, or the money problems that keep on coming. You've never understood that root goes all the way back over here to your unforgiveness. Just like believing in Christ is related to that person. So where did this idea come from? So let's go back and deal with a passage that Christ reveals, the shocking revelation about forgiveness. It's in Matthew chapter 18, and it's under part 1, why forgiving 70 times 7 is a brilliant idea. Whoa, it's a brilliant idea. Well, here's what took place. In verse number 21 of Matthew 18, Peter came to Jesus and said, Lord, how often shall my brother, another human being, not his literal brother, sin against me, and I forgive him? Up to 7 times. Now, when Peter said that, he was expecting an affirmation from God. You forgive somebody 7 times? That's a lot. But what Jesus said shocked Peter. Jesus said to him, I don't say to you up to 7 times, comma, but up to 70 times 7. Was Jesus Christ exaggerating? That's a good question. When Christ said 70 times 7, what was he trying to say to Peter? Peter, there is no limit to how many times you're supposed to forgive. Now, why should I keep on forgiving somebody? That's the question of what Christ did next. He answers the question why a person should forgive somebody who hurt them, like the mother of the doctor. Why should I forgive my mother for 2.5 pages of wounds? I don't know what you think his answer is going to be. Maybe you think it's going to be because God forgave you. It's not. Jesus Christ gave the shocking answer why a person who understands this will forgive everyone from now on, once they understand it. So what Christ did is what he frequently loved to do. He made up a story called a parable. This wasn't a real story. It was a fictional story. And he put in that story the answer to why a person should forgive 70 times 7 and put it in the middle of the story, and it carried it along. And the zinger, the part that is the point of the story, doesn't happen to the end of the story. But let's take a look at it. So in verse 22, I do not say to you 7 times, but up to 70 times 7. Therefore, okay, now he's going to tell them a story that answers the question, why should I forgive 70 times 7? Therefore, the kingdom of heaven, how heaven works with earth. The kingdom of heaven is like a certain king who wanted to settle accounts with his servants. And when he had begun to settle accounts, one was brought to him who owed him 10,000 talents, a big fortune. But as he was not able to pay the king, his master commanded that he be sold to pay off the debt, and his wife be sold to pay off the debt, and the children to pay off the debt, and all that he had, that payment may be made. Whoa, the servant is traumatized. He doesn't argue that he owes it. The servant therefore fell down before him, saying, Master, have patience with me, and I will pay you all. The truth of it is, he couldn't pay it all. Yeah. The amount of money that there is impossible to pay off. The master of that servant was moved with compassion. Whoa. Why? Because he fell down on his knees and was begging. And he responded with compassion. You see somebody begging right in front of you on their knees? I did this once. Not for something that I had done to the man, but in which another man had done to that man, and he wouldn't forgive. And this was a big thing, and God was going to judge him severely for not forgiving him. I, with 5 other men, spent the day with this man at his request. And at the end, I was so fearful because he wasn't going to forgive and was going to sue the man, that I got on my knees in front of him in my office. I literally got out of my chair. I got on my knees. I grabbed his knees and I said, Bobby, I beg you to forgive that man. And I was so moved, I was weeping. I said, let me be the man and let me apologize to you for him. Please forgive him. When that happened, that broke my friend Bobby's heart, and he forgave. When a person humbles themselves like that, it can powerfully impact you. Have compassion. Then his master, verse 27, of that servant was moved with compassion. Now look at these words. Released him. Whoa. He released him. And then, after he released him, he forgave him the debt. So there's 2 separate parts here. You release the person and you forgive the debt. But that servant who was forgiven went out and found one of his fellow servants, probably a person who worked with him or for him, who owed him 100 denarii, not very much money. And he laid hands on him and he took him by the throat, saying, pay me what you owe. So his fellow servant fell down at his feet and begged him, saying, have patience with me and I will pay you all, because he probably could have. But he would not. He would not let him have the time, but went and threw him into prison till he should pay the debt. So when his fellow servants who were watching all this, who saw the first man beg at the king's feet and got forgiveness, went over to the other person who owed him a little bit and threw him into prison, they saw this, they were very grieved. They were upset. And they came and told the king, the master, all that had been done. Then his master, oh boy, after he had called him, said to him, you wicked servant. Do you realize unforgiveness is wicked? Yeah. Whoa. The last person you didn't forgive, you were wicked. That repositions it, doesn't it? I forgave you all that debt because you begged me. Should you, now look at this, should you not also have had compassion on your fellow servant, just as I had pity on you? Now here's the question. What's the king going to do now? And his master, the king, was angry and delivered him, now underline this, to the torturers. For how long? Until he should pay all that was due him. Now here's the zinger. Here's the point of the parable. This is the shocking part. Jesus now pulls back the veil between heaven and earth and lets all of us find out what the kingdom of heaven does to somebody on the kingdom of earth when they will not forgive. Yeah. And it's not good news. So, said Jesus, just like the king threw him to the torturers until he pay all that was due him, so my heavenly Father will do to you. What's that? Throw you to be tortured. If each of you, underline these next 3 words, from his heart does not forgive his brother, another human being, his trespasses, the things he did wrong against you. Do you realize what Jesus revealed? That as the king threw the man to the torturers, listen carefully, he didn't throw that man to prison. Yeah. He threw him to people that would torture him until the torture continues. Listen, the torture continues until that is paid off. Then Jesus gives the answer. Peter, you want to know why you should forgive 70 times 7? Because if you don't forgive, my Father will do that to you. He will deliver you to the torturers. For how long, Jesus? Until you forgive the person for every single thing he did that hurt you. You mean I get torture? Yeah. until I forgive. Yes, you do. And just imagine if you have 2 people that you don't forgive, and 3 people, and 4 people, and 10 people. And that's why life doesn't make sense. We don't understand the torture that comes from things emotionally, physically, financially, relationally, could be related all the way back because the father said, nope, she won't forgive. Let's encourage her to forgive by sending her to be tortured all this time, and then she doesn't forgive another person. The torture increases. Then the person prays for that, asks people to fast for that, and it doesn't work. Why doesn't it work? Because we didn't connect it. That's still going on. And here's a person who couldn't believe in Jesus because they didn't believe and didn't forgive their mother. Just imagine what's happening in your life. So let's make some points about this as we get into this session. Number 1, God desires that everyone forgives everyone for everything. Number 2, God describes people who don't forgive as wicked. As wicked. Therefore, if I don't forgive you, I am wicked. Point number 3, God delivers everyone who chooses not to forgive to the torturers. I want you to understand something. God doesn't torture you. Look here. God doesn't torture you. God delivers you to the torturers. God doesn't do that. And I want to make a real point here. God doesn't want to deliver you to the torturers. It grieves him that you won't forgive. So there are 2 exceptions to this that I want you to understand. Exception number 1 is the window of grace. The window of grace. What is the window of grace? When a traumatic wound hits you that you can barely cope with, it's so painful and traumatic, God gives you a season of grace to cope with that and then forgive. He gives you some time. I don't know how long he gives us, but he does give us some time. I've had a couple times in my life where the wounds were so severe to me that I actually asked the Father, would you give me some time to cope? I will forgive. And had peace, and then forgave. There was no delivery to the torturers. Don't ask for 10 years. Number 2, exception 2, the season of childhood. You and I know about the traumas of childhood. All of us in this room have had various wounds from parents, from relatives when we were young, and we couldn't cope with the wounds that happened to us. What does God do? God postpones the torturers in a child's life because they are innocent until a period of time passes and they cross a barrier. We don't know when that barrier is. It's different for every child by their maturity, in which God then convicts them. Okay, I want you to forgive what he did to you. And you'll know it. You'll feel it. And you'll be convicted you should. And depending upon what you do there, changes the next period of your life, because he'll bring it about to you again. There is that series of innocence that he says, I won't judge you for this. But when you pass that innocent period where you can make up your own mind now, I'm going to invite you and tell you it's time to forgive this person. If you don't, that's when the torture begins. Make sense? Number 4, God is not abusive. That's my big fear of session 1, that you will misunderstand the heart of God. God does not want you to be delivered to the torturers. But he has little tolerance for the sin of unforgiveness. Little tolerance for it.